Remember the Pixel Slate Google announced a while back? Well, I've been testing it for about a week, and I know some people are probably wondering what Google's trying to accomplish with the Slate, and I think I have the answer. This is Google's answer to the iPad Pro, but for Android. What we've got right here is first and foremost a tablet running Google's Chrome OS, and the actual hardware feels really good in the hands. That's thanks to the rounded edges around the body, as well as the overall solid build quality. It's also got this nice high-res 12.3-inch display, and it's a pretty nice size to have when it comes to media consumption, watching movies, playing games, and of course like web browsing. Now, I really like to watch my favorite shows on large tablets, so for me the experience here is a good one, especially with those nice loud front-facing speakers. I've been using that 12.9-inch iPad Pro for a long time now, so this size feels right at home for me, but if you think that it's too large, you gotta remember once you attach a keyboard to this guy, it goes into laptop mode, and that's when you appreciate the size a bit more. Now let's talk about that laptop experience a bit. I think Chrome OS does a pretty good job at blending the world between a laptop and a regular Android tablet. It does a really good job at incorporating both, since you can use all the Android apps that you get from the Google Play Store with this. But when it comes to the actual laptop experience, you still have your file explorer. You also get a full Google Chrome web browsing experience with all the plugins and everything that you would expect from Google Chrome on a regular desktop. You're gonna be getting that here as well. So from a software side, I do think Chrome OS is evolving into something that is a viable option for laptop users who also want all access to Android apps. But where it kind of falls apart for me is the actual hardware that's available for the Slate. And I'm pointing fingers at the Pixel Slate keyboard. Now, this is the Google-made keyboard that's supposed to go alongside the Pixel Slate as one of the options if you're looking for a keyboard. But to me, this keyboard is just, I don't think it's a good buy. First off, it costs $200 and it doesn't provide the best user experience. Now, while I do think it's made out of good materials, it has a backlit keyboard. The keyboard even has circular keys that you either love or hate. I personally had no problem with it. I type pretty fine with it, but the overall feel of it just feels very flimsy. It definitely doesn't provide a good laptop situation, especially when using it on your lap. The flap that kind of keeps it all together and helps it to be a folio case feels very, very flimsy. It moves around quite a bit. For me, I think Microsoft's solution to this was including a magnet where the keyboard can actually rest on the tablet. You can't really do that with this, so you have to put it on a flat surface, and when using that on your lap, it feels all kinds of wobbly. And what's weird about it is when you're using it on a wobbly surface like your legs, you get this weird click whenever you rest your forearm on the side of the keyboard. The trackpad actually clicks, which is a huge problem because if you're moving the mouse around, this is gonna lead to a lot of unintentional clicks. I don't know how many times I've dragged things around by mistake by simply leaning on the keyboard. And it's honestly something I've never experienced before. So right here we have the Surface Pro keyboard. No matter the flex, you don't hear any clicks. The trackpad is not being clicked in by mistake. I even have the Eve laptop's keyboard, same deal. But here, with the Pixel Slate's keyboard, with just a little bit of flex, you can hear that click. And I don't know if mine is defective, but if it isn't, that's definitely a design flaw. And my other issue with this flap being so flimsy is that when you go to hold it in your hands, maybe you're just carrying it around like this, you notice the cover moves a lot. This is just not ideal. I'm not a fan of this by any means. Doesn't happen with the Surface type cover or the Eve laptop's cover, and not even the iPad Pro. Although this does wiggle just a smidge, it's nothing like this guy right here. This thing just moves all over the place. Not a good look. So for me, the Slate keyboard isn't really a good option, but I do like the fact that you can prop it up in almost any angle that you want. There's a lot of flexibility there, but I honestly have a hard time recommending the Slate keyboard at its price range with all the flaws that it currently has. But it isn't all just doom and gloom if you want to use the Slate as a laptop. There are some other options out there like the Bridge keyboard, which is actually a Bluetooth keyboard that matches perfectly with the Slate. It has the same finish, it allows it to feel a lot more sturdy, and honestly, this looks as as good as a first-party keyboard, and it even costs $50 less. Now the Hinge design is a little bit funky with this one. It uses these rubber grips to kind of hold the Slate in place, and it does a pretty good job. It allows it to move around pretty easily when attached, but something I've noticed from my experience is that those rubber pads can be moved, which will expose the metal part, which could potentially scratch your Slate if you just shove it in there without paying close attention. But I honestly do think that this is the better option between the two, although it doesn't have a backlit keyboard. But there are some other cool features and accessories like the Pixel Pen, which allows you to do all the artsy stuff that you'd come to expect, as well as use it for Google Assistant to highlight certain things on the screen, and that'll automatically make Google Assistant pop it up. And the Slate can even transcribe your handwriting to text, so if you're not feeling like typing and you just want to use your pen, you can do that as well. Speaking of Google Assistant, you have dedicated keys on the keyboard, or you can even shout out, "Hey Google," and that'll get it working. And I also really like the fact that Google implemented a fingerprint scanner right into the power button. I think that is the place that all fingerprint scanners should go, and it's nice to see it here on a tablet. And the Pixel Slate also has a front-facing camera as well as a rear-facing camera. But at the end of the day, they're cameras on a tablet, which probably won't get that much use. But it is nice to have the cameras if you ever need them. They do include portrait mode, but I just wouldn't expect the same quality that you get from the Pixel 3. I will say though, I am happy Google opted for 2 USB Type-C ports, so when you're using this thing like a laptop, you don't have to worry about what side you gotta charge it on. You can charge it from either side. You can even use the other side for accessories, which is a nice bonus. And beyond being able to plug in extra accessories with that other USB-C port, you can also use an external display so that you can project whatever you have on your screen onto a bigger display, which you can even enhance the experience of by adding a Bluetooth keyboard and Bluetooth mouse. And we've seen this kind of feature with Samsung DeX. Kind of nice to have it here so that if you're working on a project, you can actually use this little tablet to do a lot more on a bigger monitor. But one thing that I am not happy about is the fact that this thing has no headphone jack. That to me is just mind-boggling. It does come with an adapter, which is okay by smartphone standards, I guess, these days. But for a full-blown tablet, I really have a hard time understanding why they couldn't just fit a headphone jack in here. Now let's talk a little bit about the performance, and this really can vary depending on the configuration that you go for. My configuration's got Intel's 8th generation Core i5 processor, as well as 8 gigs of RAM and 120 gigs of storage. But from my experience, the performance was a bit hit or miss. Doing things like web browsing was just fine. Opening up a few apps was just fine. Watching content, not gonna be an issue. But where I started to see some problems was with just trying to play some games. If you guys are familiar with the channel, you know I like to play Sonic Forces. That's my little benchmark. It's a game that I've been addicted to for a long time. But it is my benchmark to see if the device can hold up to playing a pretty intensive game that's online, lots of things going on really quickly. And honestly, the Slate couldn't really keep up with it. I experienced a lot more lag than I ever experienced with a smartphone. And not only in the races did I have that issue, but just browsing the regular menu. It just felt like the Slate couldn't keep up. And it was honestly the same experience with some of my favorite mobile games. And not being able to play games smoothly has me a bit fearful for more intensive apps that require just a bit more horsepower. I've also had it glitch out on me a few times. You guys can see with a piece of B-roll here that this thing was kind of just freaking out on its own, moving tabs around, doing all kinds of weird stuff. But I'm hoping that maybe because I have an early review unit and that a software update may be able to fix that in the future. And that's been my experience coming from the second highest configuration option available. So anything below that has me a little bit worried. I almost feel like I couldn't even recommend anything under the i5. So from a performance perspective, I feel like you gotta go i5 or i7. The lower ones you can use for just regular web browsing, but I honestly wouldn't expect to do anything too crazy on them. And while this thing can run Android apps from the Google Play Store, which aren't all optimized for Chrome OS, and they can all work with any Android device that you may already own, it is clear that Google's targeting Pixel owners by even including some special features if you are already a Pixel owner. Some of those features being Smart Unlock, where you can unlock the Slate with your phone. Also, there's instant tethering, which is pretty cool because you don't need Wi-Fi in order to get on the internet with the Slate. If you have your Pixel and it has service, it can get the data from there and function like it's running on Wi-Fi with the data that you're getting from your Pixel. You also get access to your messages, so you can respond to text right from the Slate, which is kind of nice, kind of reminds me of iMessage a bit. So as a companion device to a Pixel phone or maybe another Android phone, I think it works just fine if you want to just do everyday things. But if you're a student or maybe a professional, this might not be the best option for you. Yes, you'll be able to do all the typical things like use a full web browser, access Microsoft Word. You can do those kind of things, but if you need specialized programs, that's kind of where you run into limitations. I just feel like those basic things don't warrant the price tag that you're gonna have to pay for this. There are better options out there that cost a lot less and pretty much do the same thing. Like I said, if you're really big on Android, you wanna have access to Android apps on your tablet and get a full web browsing experience, this will definitely do that, but you won't be able to do some of the crazier things unless you maybe go for the i7 model. I feel like Google's still trying to get its footing when it comes to the Pixel Book, Pixel Slate, those kind of things. Google's still trying to figure it out, but based on the operating system alone, I do think that from that perspective, it's moving in the right direction. The physical hardware of the Slate itself, I think is really good. Specs could use some work, and that Folio keyboard definitely needs some redoing. But that about wraps it up for this video, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I know this was a bit of a long one, but let me know what you think of the Pixel Slate down below. Till next video, guys, it's your average consumer. Peace.